Thank you very much, Kevin. Good afternoon, members of the mutual community. Last year, you may recall, I spoke on the big data disruption as an emerging strategic risk. I'd like to thank Steve for inviting me back this year to continue the conversations, share the inroads we're making, speak about the constraints we continue to face, and the opportunity to learn from lessons of the past. The growing adoption of big data has brought an array of benefits in the insurance industry. Based on a study conducted by SNS Telecom and IT, feedback from insurers worldwide highlight the following benefits. 80% accuracy in underwriting prediction for risk selection and pricing, a 90% acceleration in processing of non-emergency claims, 70% expense reduction in claims management, a 60% improvement in fraud detection, 50% reduction in policy administration workload to improve operational efficiency, and a 30% increase in access to insurance services for the consumer. At Compass 2018, members prioritized big data analytics as one of the top 3 strategic risks facing the mutual community. Analytical solutions have been explored over the last few years, and we are now on the cusp of realizing some of those benefits. The Auto Rate Filing Committee began the journey back in 2012, leading to the pursuit of generalized linear modeling for the shared automobile portfolio. GLM is an industry standard for insurance pricing, with over 80% of the Canadian marketplace using it as their rating methodology. A traditional rating algorithm cannot compete as effectively against a GLM rating algorithm. According to our actuaries, a very conservative estimate is that it could enhance our performance by $2 to $4 million. GLM would not have been possible without first improving the availability of the data. The lack of aggregate data was a significant constraint initially. The Data Strategy Committee, OMIA Statistics Team, members and vendors are to be applauded for collaborating to take progressive steps to collect information contained within the standard automobile application form. While finally getting to GLM in place for June 1st is a monumental success for all stakeholders, there is more to our journey. It is imperative to realize that we still have data constraints that will prevent the mutual community from fully exploiting GLL benefit. Only 75% of the data available on the application is collected, and some of that data is not collected at the most granular level or even accurately. In comparison, one insurance company has now filed a decline rule for any application that is not fully completed. They recognize the underlying data enables informed risk selection and pricing decisions. We often get asked the question, what data is needed? And the answer is simple, all of it. System vendors will need to support members in 100% data collection and the functionality to push data forward to a rating engine. Data collection should not strictly be limited to user input, but rather supplemented through acquisition of available third-party sources. This will provide multiple benefits in not only predictive analytics, capability for risk selection and pricing, but also effective claims management processes, operational improvement that will lead to expense reduction, as well as setting the stage for a good customer experience in a digital environment. Water modeling is such an example of supplementing our data with a third-party solution to pursue predictive analytics. The early market leaders introduced the new water coverage alongside more sophisticated analytical methods and models to manage catastrophic risk exposure, prevent adverse selection, and charge the consumer the right price for each risk. For those of you that attended Compass Planning last year, you may remember Communitech's recommended design thinking approach. Unlike traditional planning that breaks projects into chunks or phases, a design thinking approach requires each iteration to deliver a minimum viable product. So using the analogy of delivering a car, you might start with building the chassis first, but that doesn't provide the consumer with a mode of transportation to get them from point A to point B. A design thinking approach would instead deliver a skateboard as the first prototype. It's not the end deliverable, but it is a minimum viable product for the customer to use for transportation. Feedback, such as the need to steer, is incorporated into the second prototype of the scooter. Each successive iteration continues to provide a minimum viable product while making enhancements, like adding a seat in the bicycle prototype or adding power in the motorcycle prototype, until achieving the final deliverable of a car. Let's look at how the journey into water modeling compared. Back in 2016, the new coverage wording was supported with the first skateboard deliverable, a water model solution to support risk selection and pricing. The water model initially assessed fluvial exposure, which means riverine, that is considered true overland water. There was no modeling of pluvial exposure, which is most predominant in urban centers from excessive rain, which manifests itself as surface water, groundwater, sump, sewer backup. Because our portfolio has limited concentration in urban centers, the fluvial model, with some adjustments to act as a proxy, was recommended for risk selection and rating for all water hazard. Portfolios were analyzed, and members received monthly reporting of each policyholder's risk. The monthly reporting wasn't the best way to get the information to the underwriter's hands. The scooter deliverable saw the development of a web portal for users to access information in real time, and was followed up with a web service at the geocode level that was integrated into your policy administration systems. In December, we delivered the bicycle, incorporating further enhancements to the water model. The enhancements include an additional 5,000 small lakes and higher resolution. But more importantly, our strategic partner, Impact Forecasting, released 2 pluvial models last year. One optimistic, which assumes all infiltration is working, and the other pessimistic, which assumes all infiltration is not working. This was validated against historical events like the floods in Toronto in 2013 and Windsor in 2016. Impact Forecasting is currently working on a third pluvial model, known as moderate, to consider different infiltration levels based on the event severity. By this summer, the new combined water model will be incorporated into the web portal and web service, both at a high resolution level, to complete the motorcycle phase. Full workflow integration with policy administration systems and broker management systems will finalize delivery of a full car solution. The mutual loss experience over the last 5 years shows the total claims incurred for residential property has been increasing. And while fire does remain our top peril, water damage claims have been increasing in both size and frequency. Water damage claims average $66 million per year, increasing at an annual rate of 9%. There is a 40% increase in claims count for pluvial losses in the last 2 years alone. The severity is also 36% higher than prior years, suggesting the mutual community has faced adverse selection as competitors implemented stricter risk selection guidelines based on analysis of their own claims data. The following diagram illustrates the difference between a pluvial footprint for a 15-minute rainfall under both the optimistic and pessimistic pluvial scenarios. Under the optimistic scenario on the left, sewage systems work properly, as shown by the dark blue color, which represents a higher depth in the 2 water reservoirs. There is little to no pooling on the streets, as shown in the light blue, where the depth would be less than 10 centimeters. In contrast, under the pessimistic model, when sewage systems are not working, some streets are flooded, as shown by the darker blue color, where the depth would be up to 75 centimeters. Under this model, we can expect more water damage claims. Historically, the mutual community has not seen the extent of water losses in small towns and rural areas as the industry has in urban centers. But in more recent years, we are seeing the impact from climate change. While some portfolios are well served under the optimistic model, other members experiencing poorer results or based on their knowledge of local conditions are better served under the pessimistic model. In New Brunswick, for example, the recent flooding events in the St. John and other areas are typical for this season. And yet, the optimistic model does not suggest higher exposure because the storm sewers really should be able to handle the amount of water. But the flooding, which was due to a combination of precipitation and snowmelt, was compounded by the fact that the frozen ground prevented infiltration. While the model does take into consideration probability of events in different seasons, New Brunswick doesn't have as much historical data from gauging stations to properly validate. The local knowledge within our mutual community complemented the model analysis for a recommendation that the pessimistic model is much more appropriate to use, at least during the spring and winter seasons. What defines us as a mutual community is not a traditional way of doing things. It is the pioneering, collaborative spirit of those that have come before us. It is the hardworking, innovative approach taken to create mutuals more than 100 years ago and the reinsurance arm 60 years ago that have built the community into what it is today. As I shared at the beginning of the presentation, with such staggering numbers demonstrating the benefits of big data, we need a shared strategy to fully exploit predictive underwriting before we can even begin to prioritize other initiatives to use data for claims management, operational efficiency, or improving the customer experience. Data is everywhere. It is everything in our world today. And I'd like you to pause and just think about that for a moment. At the start of the day, the Wi-Fi connected thermostat in your house begins to increase the temperature. You wake up to your alarm from Google Home with a tailored response based on your preferences that shares the local weather, the local news, your commute, before it starts to stream your favorite radio station. You get your day started by jumping into the tractor and checking commodity prices before you head into the barn to check on the robotic feeder and then the milk output in the last 24 hours. Where has the morning gone, you think to yourself, as you open up your Tim Hortons app to pre-order your coffee and meet up with others? Sitting in the Tim Hortons, your video doorbell alerts you to the Amazon parcel being dropped off. You jump into your truck, punch in the address of a new agricultural supplier to get the navigational route. And at the suppliers, you make a credit card purchase, and they send the receipt to your email. On the way home, you use your cell phone to preheat your oven. And at the end of a long day, you catch an hour of your favorite show on Netflix. As George Orwell forecasted in 1984, what was once the domain of our private lives is now Big Brother is watching you. Virtually every decision, every action can be monitored in our lives today. There were 5 exabytes of information created between the dawn of civilization through 2003. But that much information is now created every 2 days, according to Eric Schmidt of Google. With all that data, all of it, any business can derive insights to improve their business model, move from intuitive decision-making into data-driven decision-making. As a community, we need to recognize how acquiring and leveraging good quality data is required if we are to continue on our journey into predictive modeling for risk selection and pricing, to improve the claims management processes, increase our operational efficiency, and improve the customer experience to avoid being at a competitive disadvantage. Farm Mutual Re is collaborating with OMIA, the Data Strategy Committee, and mutual community stakeholders to assess the business requirements to contemplate future data infrastructure needs for the mutual community, such as the opportunity for an aggregate data lake. A data lake is a system or repository of data stored in its natural format and is usually used for tasks such as reporting, visualization, analytics, and machine learning. A data lake can include structured data from relational databases, so think of things like rows and columns, and it can include unstructured data like emails, documents, PDFs, even images and video. A database or a data warehouse, like the OMIA Central Insurance Statistical Database, can only store data that has been structured. For most insurance carriers, technology advancements, bigger data sets, and predictive analytics offer competitive advantage and are an absolute necessity in today's sophisticated marketplace. As a community-wide analytics platform, a data lake will help facilitate better data movement to allow the mutuals to become more data-driven. It will support our members and the sustainability of the mutual community as a complement to our local service as a differentiator. We have listened to your needs. We've heard you loud and clear on the need to pursue big data analytics. A necessary first step in this journey is to determine the data needs of today and well into our future. We have a vision to empower the mutual community by using big data analytics to succeed. We need to do this together. No one company is as strong as the mutual community is as a whole. And we can learn from our lessons of the past by drawing a parallel to the discussions for a single computer system. We have another chance to collaborate and embrace a shared strategy. It requires all stakeholders of the mutual community to come together for transformative change. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and attention,